Hi, everybody. This is Denise Teweb. Thank you again for joining me. Today I'm talking about NIST Special Publication 835, Guide to Information Security Services. And we're going to talk about the types of IT security services. What we're going to cover, we're going to do a brief overview of the publication, its intended audience, and sort of what you can expect. Then we'll talk about IT security service arrangements. We'll look at the categories of security services. And then we'll go into detail talking about the different types of services that fall under each category. So hang in there, let's get started. All right, overview of NIST Special Publication 835. The purpose, the limitations, considerations, and the intended audience. All right, the purpose of 835 is that if you're in IT security, you're frequently evaluating and selecting IT security services or products to maintain your IT security programs. And the services may be offered from an internal group or externally, but either way, the individuals responsible for selecting, implementing, and managing those services have to carefully review what's out there and make decisions about what IT security services you're going to bring into the organization, whether it be internal or external. So we're going to talk about that. Okay, the purpose of 835 is to provide assistance with selecting, implementing, and managing IT security services by guiding you through the phases of the IT security services life cycle, which we'll cover in a different video. The IT security services life cycle gives you a framework that enables the decision makers to organize IT security efforts from initiation to closeout. And it's an entire process that we'll discuss again in a different video. The systematic management of IT security services process is really important because if you don't manage it, it can have some serious implications for your security posture. It's not as simple as, okay, let's just go get this product and start using it, and without giving it careful consideration, because there are a lot of technical things you have to think about. How does it integrate into our current mix of controls? There's a lot to think about, so keep that in mind. If you're making IT security decisions, you have to think about the cost, you have to think about the security requirements, and you have to think about it in the context of how it helps you achieve your organizational mission and strategies and goals. How do you allow IT security to be a driver for the business? 835 discusses each phase of the IT security services life cycle. And the discussion is directed toward a wide variety of organizations with really diverse needs. So some of the stuff that you'll hear will be relevant to your organization, especially if you're a large organization. If you're a smaller organization, some of the stuff won't be relevant to you. If you're a federal organization, then all of the stuff I discussed will apply in some way to your organization. Okay. This guide discusses general topics, such as the importance of developing agreements that define the service levels. So you're not just out there choosing providers, you have to agree on what's going to be provided. What we don't do in 835 is really give you prescriptions on exactly what your service or service levels need to be. This is something that you and your team will have to decide on individually as it relates to the needs in your organization. So the guide is not specifically giving you, okay, do this, but that's characteristic of all NIST publications. It gives you guidance on what to do. It doesn't tell you what to do. Okay, some of the limitations in this publication is that we're only going to talk about a sampling of the possible IT security services. So this is not an exhaustive list. And that, of course, makes sense because the security catalog 853 is huge. It contains over 800 and some controls. And so, we can't possibly cover all the IT security services. Organizations may wish to acquire a service which contains a significant security component, such as your sysadmin stuff. These types of services are not addressed in this guide at all. So you won't be hearing anything about complex security components. 835 does not advocate a position for or against outsourcing. That's the other thing that happens in this publication. You can look at OMB Circular A76 that talks about performance of commercial activities to begin to have the conversation around whether you're going to outsource or not. But 835 does not make any judgments about which way is best. We leave that totally up to you. The intended audience for 835 is organizations that provide IT security services, regardless of whether the service comes from within the organization or whether it's procured from an outside provider. The goal, again, is to help decision makers implement and manage the most appropriate IT security services, service levels, and service arrangements to best meet the organization's missions and needs. So when you're looking at IT security services, I cannot say this enough, you want to be sure that you're implementing services that meet the organization's mission and business needs. So that's all I'll say about that. So next up is the types of IT security services. Oh no, IT security service arrangements. Selecting the most appropriate services, service mix, and service levels is a complex decision, as is deciding who should provide the needed service. Okay, there are a wide range of possible service arrangements. You can get the IT service internally from your employees or your team. They can provide the service in-house. Or you can procure IT security services from external providers. And that can look a number of different ways. You could buy those services from a subsidiary organization. If you're a large company, you could get those services from one of your subsidiaries. You could get it from another business unit within the organization, or you can go up completely outside the organization and procure the IT security service from a commercial service provider. So those are your service provider options. And here's an example that we'll talk about. Say you retain, as an organization, you say, okay, we're going to retain control of the firewall within the organization. So our internal team is going to configure and manage the firewall. But what we want to do is bring in an external group to handle the day-to-day monitoring of the audit logs, right? So the security arrangement and how it's defined is going to be characterized differently depending on the person's role. I'll give you an example. The firewall manager is probably going to look at the arrangement as an external one because an outside group is performing the audit review service. The top-level business manager in this scenario is going to see this as an internal arrangement because the firewall service is implemented internally and managed internally, because that's the level that he or she is looking at this arrangement. If you ask the organization's IT security officer, then what you're going to get is a view that's somewhere in the middle. It's probably going to be viewed as a hybrid arrangement because we handle some of the service in-house, implementing and managing the firewall, and we outsource the monitoring of the audit logs. So it's a hybrid service. And if that didn't confuse you, then thank you for staying with me. But again, there are just many different service arrangements, internal, external, or hybrid. No matter what service arrangement that you choose, please keep in mind that if there is a data breach, if there is a breach of any kind, the responsibility always remains with you. It is the responsibility of your company if you outsource if for instance, you get some services that are provided by a cloud provider and something happens, you don't get to blame the service provider. Data breaches always remain the responsibility of the organization. Okay, some other things that you need to consider when you're looking at IT security services. You need to think about the type of service arrangement, which we just discussed. You have to look at the service provider qualifications, their requirements, their experience, and their viability. You want to make sure that you're choosing sound business partners. You need to look at the trustworthiness of the service provider employees. Certainly, if they're working on federal contracts where clearances are required, then that will come into play as well. You need to look at how the service provider protects your organization's systems, applications, and data. And you have to think about the size, the type, the complexity, and the cost, and the criticality of the service that you're looking to procure. Because if it's really the more complex or critical the service, then of course the degree of rigor that you bring toward this acquisition process is going to be different than what you would bring to something that's less critical to the business. Okay, types of IT security services. There are 3 types of IT security services: management, operational, and technical. I'm going to give you a brief description of each one, and then we're going to go into looking at the different services that fall under each one of those categories. All right, operational services. Where is management services? All right, I'm missing my slide for management services, but I still want to talk about this. Management services are those services that fall under the purview of senior management, the people who are in charge of managing the IT security program itself. And so these are your high-level controls, your policies, your procedures, those sorts of things that come under the people who handle the actual governance of the IT security program. Then you have your operational services. Operational services focus on your controls that are implemented and executed by people as opposed to systems. Your operational services often require technical or specialized expertise and rely on management activities and technical controls. And you'll begin to see what that means when we go into looking at operational services. And then finally, you have technical services. These are the services that focus on security controls that a computer system executes. And these services are depend on the proper function of the system to be effective. So your system has to be working properly for these particular services to be effective. Again, the categories of IT security services are management, operational, and technical. So let's look at management security services and what falls under that. Hold on just a second. Okay, there are 6 management security services that we're going to talk about. There's IT security program development. That's your highest level service. You got to stand up an IT security program. The next is your IT security policy. Then there's risk management, IT security architecture, certification and accreditation, and IT security product evaluation. Those are your 6 management security services. Again, that's program development, security policy development, risk management, security architecture, certification and accreditation, and your IT security product evaluations. You can do those in-house or you can outsource them. So let's talk about program development. An IT security program is a set of security controls which can be grouped under the terms management, operational, and technical. Policy, standards, and procedures for federal organizations, because keep in mind, all of these NIST publications are designed first for federal organizations. The policies, standards, and procedures are established by FISMA, the Federal Information Security Management Act. Then you have OMB Circular A130, and I'm sure there are some others that have been implemented since I did this publication, but there are a lot of federal policies and regulations and laws that govern how IT security programs are managed within federal organizations. And then there are other government policies, standards, and procedures that are issued by the Office of Management and Budget, NIST, and other agencies on an ad hoc basis. Okay, standards, guidelines, and policy. Because policy is typically written at a broad level, organizations have to develop standards, guidelines, and procedures that give employees a clear approach for implementing policy. Standards and guidelines talk about your specific technologies and methods that will be used to secure your systems. Procedures are going to be your detailed steps to follow to accomplish a particular security-related task to implement a specific control. So those are your detailed step-by-step procedures. Your standards, guidelines, and procedures can be distributed in your organization via handbooks, regulations, or manuals, even on a website. But these documents ensure that your employees are aware of their role in the IT security program and that they also comply with your IT security policies. All right. IT security program services. Service providers can help you develop and maintain an organization-wide security program. They can help you ensure that it's implemented effectively. They can evaluate the performance of your major components, and they can provide security training to your employees, whether it's technical training for your people who are down in the trenches implementing technical controls, or security awareness training to your entire employee base. The important thing to remember is that everybody does have a role in IT security, and your biggest source of trouble is often your employees. So you want to make sure that you have instituted security awareness training. That's kind of one of my things. Okay, the elements of an IT security program service. Assess the risk to operations and assets under the organization's control. So that's your risk assessment. Determine the level of security appropriate to the organization's operations and assets, because of course you want to implement security that's commensurate with risk. So you do a risk assessment, and then you look at what you're securing, whether it's at a high, low, or moderate level of security, and then you govern your security practices to match the level of security that you need for what you are protecting. Obviously, if you're the Department of Defense, you've got a high-level critical system, you're going to secure it one way. If you are the public library, yes, you have systems to secure, but the need to get it right and the criticality of what can happen if there is some kind of breach is going to be very different. And then they can help you develop and maintain a current system security plan for each of the systems that supports your operations. Also, service providers can help you develop incident handling procedures. They can help you develop processes for sharing information about common vulnerabilities, including a description of reporting externally. And a service provider can help you develop a set of effective security controls and techniques. Also, you're going to need to develop capital planning and investment control processes that ensure that your security controls are integrated into IT investments. They can help you develop a set of IT security metrics that enables you to effectively assess the adequacy of your security controls, your policies, your procedures, and to continue to justify your security control investments. Because when you go, depending on your organization and the culture, you have to justify spending the money on IT security. And sometimes it can be a hard sell. And that's where your security metrics come in. That's a different conversation that we'll have in a different video, but keep in mind that metrics do matter. An IT security service provider can also help you analyze the extent of integration of your IT security program with critical infrastructure protection, or your CIP responsibilities. And that's if you are an industry that's in one of the industries that's part of the critical infrastructure protection that was established. Those industries like water and lights and nuclear, there are a lot of them. But if the work that you do falls under critical infrastructure protection, then you have to consider that as well. And a service provider can help you do that. Okay, IT security policy is another one of the services. It is defined as the documentation of IT security decisions. Basically, how do we do things around here when it relates to security? What's our email policy? What's our acceptable use policy? What's our access to our system access policy? A lot of different policies come into play. IT security policy is fully covered in this special publication 812. So I suggest you look at that if you are really interested in drilling down. There are three categories of security policies. They're your program policies, your issue-specific policies, and your system-specific policies. Program policies are your high-level policies that are used to create the IT security program. That policy defines the scope within the organization. It assigns your implementation responsibilities. If you are standing up an IT security program, you have to define roles and you have to clearly assign responsibility to those roles. You definitely don't want a program, whether you set it up in-house or you hire somebody to do it for you. You don't want to set up a program that does not clearly state who does what. This is one of those areas where, yeah, we need to know who's responsible for what. The other thing your program policy does is it establishes your strategic direction and it assigns resources for implementing the policy. Your issue-specific policies address specific issues of concern to the organization, like contingency planning. So you'd have a contingency planning policy, the use of a particular method for systems risk management, and how you're going to implement new regulations or laws. GDPR immediately comes to mind. These policies are likely to require more frequent revision as changes in technology and related factors take place. So your issue-specific policies are going to change more often than your program policies. Then you have system-specific policies that address individual systems, such as establishing your access control list or how you're going to train your users as to what system actions are permitted. These policies are going to vary from system to system within the same organization. And additionally, the policy may refer to entirely different matters, such as managerial decision setting an organization's email policy or fax security policy, if anybody's still faxing. Your IT security policy services can help you analyze your existing and security policies and develop new ones if needed. And that's your policy standards, guidelines, and procedures. A lot of companies outsource this, but keep in mind that even though you outsource it, it still remains the responsibility of the organization. So you don't want to just hire somebody and say, look, just stand up a security program, create my policies. You need to read it and make sure that you're implementing it, because if there is a data breach and if you ever end up in court, guess what? Those documents are going to come into question. So don't just give it to somebody and forget it. The authority for approving policy is inherently a core function of an organization, and therefore final approval of policies should be performed by the organization. That's what I just said. All right, given this constraint, you need to limit your service providers, whether they're internal or external, to assistance and support, not decision-making. A comprehensive IT security policy service can consist of many elements, and that's going to depend on the specific needs of your organization and the relative maturity of your IT security program. If you have an IT security program already in place, then the services that you're going to get are going to be very different than if you're starting from scratch. All right, elements of IT security policy services include high-level analysis of your organization's operational environment, a discussion of emerging technologies and how you might use those in, how you're going to address those in your policy, the governance process that the organization is going to use, procedures, and a determination of compliance. Are you complying to all regulations that apply to you and any guidelines that you're subject to? IT security policy services can also include a gap analysis. for your organization or your security program that assesses the differences between your current state and your future state. You know, here's where you are, here's where you want to be, here's the gap, and then again, of course, how you're going to close that gap. Development of a unified set of security program policies and detailed issue and system-specific policies. The development of short, medium, and long-term implementation plans that identify the task, the resources, the priority, and the ownership of those tasks. Who's going to get it done? What do we need to do, and who's going to get it done? And also, one of the security services is a development of your IT security metrics. Next up, under management services is risk management. If you hire someone to handle risk management for you, or you choose to do it in-house, NIST 830 is the primary guidance for risk management. And it states that the primary goal of risk management is to balance the operational and economic cost of protective measures and achieve gains in mission capability by protecting IT systems and data. That's in NIST 830, which talks about risk assessments. NIST 839 talks about the risk management process. Both important documents. Okay, some risk management services. Service providers can come up with a combination of service packages that support your risk management activities. This can include developing risk management guidance, for supporting your organization's risk management program, managing the risk management program as a whole. But again, the organization is going to retain responsibility for the program, but you can hire someone to manage it for you. Also, they can perform a risk assessment and develop a risk mitigation plan for you. And also, under risk management services, we have auditing. Auditing an organization's mature and operational risk management program for effectiveness. And NIST says it this way: are your security controls implemented properly, operating as intended, and giving you the desired results? Another security service is IT security architecture. Your security architecture refers to the strategic planning and the development of an IT infrastructure that supports the mission and the security objectives. So you have your enterprise architecture, which is how your systems that support all of your company operations, how those systems are set up and interconnected. And within that system, you have your IT security architecture. So a service provider can help you with that. It is a process that is developed during the security design phase after a security requirements analysis has been conducted. A note about IT security architectures services: if your organization asks a service provider to design a new security architecture, then you have to give the service provider access to the technology and the security baseline of your organization's current architecture. Okay, if that meant nothing to you because you're not in the technical trenches, don't worry about it. But let's talk about baselining. Okay, you want to conduct baselining if it hasn't already been done by your organization. And what baselining does, it identifies the business needs, the functional requirements, the security requirements, does risk assessments, and the security controls in place. So you want to look at your current state. Where are we starting? Do we know the business needs? Do we know the functional requirements, what it must do? Do we know the security requirements and other non-functional requirements? Have we done risk assessments? Let's take a look at those and see what our risk assessments say. And then let's look at the security controls that we have in place. You want to look at your security controls, identify and assess technologies that are going to enforce your security policies. You want to develop a methodology for selecting the security solutions that best serve the organization's needs. And you want to document the security architecture. Again, those are IT security architecture services that you can do in-house or that you can outsource. Next up, under management security services is certification and accreditation. Accreditation is that formal declaration by an authorizing official that a system is approved to operate. at an acceptable level of risk and in a particular environment using a prescribed set of technical, managerial, and operational safeguards to an acceptable level of risk. This is your authority to operate. Accreditation is usually supported by a technical security evaluation, a risk assessment, a contingency plan, and signed rules of behavior. Did I say planned? A contingency plan. Then certification is the technical security evaluation of an IT system that's made in support of the accreditation process to establish the extent to which a particular design and implementation meets a set of specified security requirements. So here are our security requirements. Does the technical stuff that we put in place meet those requirements? That's certification. There is a federal guideline for security certification and accreditation of information technology systems. It used to be 837, but 837 is a completely different publication now, so I don't know the number for this, but I will find it and put it in the comments underneath this video. Okay, let's talk about certification and accreditation services. The complexity and the degree of rigor of your certification activities is going to, again, vary depending on the criticality, the information sensitivity, the system exposure, and the level of concern. So keep that in mind. Your CNA service providers can manage or conduct a complete certification, or they can prepare and assess individual documents in the final certification package that you're going to ultimately present to the accreditor for approval. Some CNA service activities are developing a security test and evaluation plan and test procedures, conducting a security test and evaluation plan, analyzing and reporting your test results, developing and or conducting vulnerability assessments, developing a final vulnerability assessment report, and providing technical support to the certifier or the accreditor. And finally, in management security services, you have IT security product evaluation. Okay, there are two prominent security testing and evaluation programs in place to assess the security features and assurances of commercial off-the-shelf products. And that's going to be your National Information Assurance Partnership Common Criteria Evaluation and Validation Scheme, CCEVS. That's a mouthful. And your NIST Crypto Module Validation Program, CMVP. In both of those programs, there's a federal body that validates the results of the test and the evaluation processes that are conducted by these private sector labs to ensure that the security standards of a certain product are being applied correctly and consistently. When products can't be found on existing validated product list, it may be possible that other parties have evaluated a particular product. In many cases, it's not cost-effective to conduct comprehensive security evaluations for the one-time use of an IT security product unless that product is going to be used extensively throughout an organization. Therefore, products that are on the validated product list should be considered as an alternative. For more information about security assurance, look at NIST Special Publication 823. Okay, the services, the CCEVS, Common Controls, employs a network of private sector, not common controls, common criteria, employs a network of private sector accredited testing labs who independently evaluate commercial security products. So when you're looking at a commercial security product, one of the things you're going to look at is whether it's on a validated list. The CMVP, also using independent accredited private sector labs, focuses on security conformance testing of cryptographic modules against FIPS 142. And the FIPS are documents also created by NIST, and their federal information processing standards. So FIPS 140-2 is your security requirements for cryptographic modules and related federal crypto algorithm standards. All right, so those are your 6 management security services. Again, IT security program development, IT security policy development, risk management, IT security IT security architecture, certification and accreditation, and IT security product evaluation. Those are all management security services that you can do in-house or that you can outsource. Next up, operational security services. There are 4 of those. Those are contingency planning, incident handling, testing, and training. Contingency planning, incident handling, testing, and training. So first up, contingency planning. What is that? Contingency planning is designed to reduce the consequences of any loss of data or infrastructure. So if you lose some data or your systems go down, you need a contingency plan to tell you what you're going to do. It enables organization personnel to restore critical IT function and connectivity rapidly, effectively, and safely. It defines the procedure, resources, tasking, and information required for performing recovery actions in response to any number of events. It gives you confidence that critical resources are going to be available when needed and facilities and facilitates your continuity of operations in an emergency situation. This is what your contingency plan does. It's a living document that must be updated regularly to reflect changes to your system's configurations and your operations. Because if something goes down, if you have a flood, if something just happens that knocks out your whole system, you're going to need detailed knowledge about what the system was doing in order to restore it. Okay, there are 5 main components of a contingency plan. Supporting information. This provides an introduction and concept of operation for the plan. Notification or activation talks about your notification procedures, damage assessment, and plan activation. Like, what does it take to put us into a mode where we have to use the contingency plan? Then recovery. Items such as the sequence of recovery activities and recovery procedures. Then there's reconstitution. The items in that section of your plan are the sequence of recovering activities, testings of systems, and termination of operations. And then you have your plan appendices. And these items include contact information, equipment list, service agreements, and any other related contingency plans. So, under contingency planning services, service providers can offer services for various phases of the contingency planning life cycle. They can conduct a cost-benefit analysis for each breakdown of the service offering, develop, update, and test, and execute. Because keep in mind, you have to develop the contingency plan, and before you need it, you want to test it. And you also have to keep it updated anytime you change your systems. And again, that may be something that you want to outsource, and also to execute the contingency plan when you actually need it. So developing the plan. The organization's contingency plan requires gathering information from many functional areas. The vendor's first step should be to perform a business impact assessment to determine the system's internal and external dependencies, allowable outage times, and your recovery priorities. The BIA provides a basis for developing specific recovery strategies and procedures that are going to make up the heart of the contingency plan. Updating the plan as needed is a service, again, because the plan is a living document. It is very common to retain the same service provider that developed the plan to also update and test it. That's common. Updates to the plan should be made when changes in personnel, procedures, assets, or other resources are incorporated into the system. If you build, for instance, a contingency plan based on having, an expert systems network guy, he's just an expert, he or she, and this person can be counted on, they've been there a while. Well, if that person leaves the organization, that's going to change. It might change what happens as technical expertise moves in and out of the organization. You do want to keep that in mind. And that may have not been the best example, but you understand what I'm saying. When something changes, change your contingency plan. Okay, updating and testing the contingency plan. Your service provider may ensure that the plan is tested before the circumstances requires it. The test may be a walkthrough or a simulated drill or a full operational exercise that covers all aspects of the plan. A lot of companies do tabletop drills, but you do want to get your people together to practice this so that people know what they're supposed to do when the contingency plan is activated. Another service is providing results of the testing exercising of the exercise documented in the contingency plan and discussed with management. The results are going to determine the effectiveness of the contingency procedures, and it's going to present any flaws that you need to take care of. Your staff must be trained in their contingency-related duties so that when an unexpected event interrupts your operations, recovery is going to be easier and people are going to know what to expect. That, again, is another service that can be provided. And then under the execute step of your contingency plan, the responsibility for the execution phase always lies with the organization, but service providers can support certain aspects of the execution phase. For example, you may outsource your data recovery because service providers can give you hot or mobile sites for system and data recovery. So they also may provide periodic training to your personnel on the plan and on their roles in the plan. Again, should you have to activate your contingency plan, you want to make sure that your people can get up and running quickly and that they're not there standing there with the deer in the headlights look about, oh my goodness, what do I do? And so you can hire security service providers to help you with that. Next up, under operational security, incident handling. An incident is an adverse event in a computer system or network caused by the failure of a security mechanism or an attempted or threatened breach of these mechanisms. Either your system failed or somebody's trying to break into it or somebody broke into it. Either way, you have an incident. An incident handling capability is something that your organization needs to provide the ability to react quickly and efficiently to disruptions in normal processing. Effective incident handling can be achieved by developing and instituting effective processes and procedures for the 6 phases of incident response. And here are your 6 phases of incident response. Preparation, identification, containment, eradication, recovery, and follow-up. Incident handling services can look like developing the incident handling program, developing and maintaining system configuration profiles, providing forensics capabilities, testing and updating incident handling procedures, managing and executing the incident handling procedures, isolation of affected systems and platforms, triage, report assessment. That's where you interpret log files, prioritize and analyze. Identification and verification, which is determine the nature and the scope of the incident. Categorization, determine the sensitivity of your compromised information system and the incident. How sensitive is this? How bad is this data breach? Internal and external coordination, where you notify and coordinate with appropriate internal and external parties, including law enforcement sometimes on a need-to-know basis. And finally, resolution. These are your incident handling procedural services. Under procedural services, you also have technical assistance, where the service provider provides detailed analysis of the event, such as how it occurred and what failed to work properly. Eradication, this is where you eliminate incident causes and effects. Recovery, this is where you return the systems to normal operations. Preventative support, operations maintenance and monitoring of your intrusion detection system. Training, post-incident consulting, like it happened, now what do we do? And third-party analysis, validation of eradication and recovery, corrective and mitigation actions, and reporting. Somebody has to do all of that. And then you have testing services. Security testing, where you test the security posture of your information systems and networks. And this is a critical component of securing a system. You don't just implement controls, controls, you actually have to test them. There's an exhaustive guidance on that is NIST 842, which is a guideline on network security testing that you can download and take a look at if you'd like. Testing is the only way to validate that the security measures and procedures are working as intended. Testing can also assist in identifying previously unknown weaknesses and vulnerabilities, and all test activities, whether they're manual test or automated test, require human involvement and thus could be provided as a service. So uses for your testing results, well, as a reference point for any corrective action, as a benchmarking tool to enable your organization to track progress, to assess implementation of system security requirements, for cost-benefit analysis, and also as input into the larger lifecycle activities such as your risk assessments, functional requirements analysis, certification and accreditation, and performance improvement efforts. So your testing results can be used for a lot of purposes. Some categories of testing that you might want to outsource or certainly provide internally, but some categories of testing to consider: network mapping, vulnerability scanning, penetration testing, ST&E, password cracking, log reviews, integrity checkers, virus detection, and war dialing. Because testing is highly specialized and technical in nature, think of pen testing immediately comes to mind. Testing is frequently considered for external service providers. Most companies are outsourcing that, except for, your larger organizations, but a lot of companies outsource testing. Because it's highly invasive, it's important that service providers be capable and also trusted by your organization. Testing can be conducted as a separate activity or as part of the risk management program under risk assessment. The service provider will need clear and unambiguous direction from management, and that means a written rules of engagement. If you hire somebody to do a pen test or to do testing on your system, you want to have a contract with them that gives them permission to do the things that you're hiring them to do, and that spells it out. Pen testers call it a get out of jail free card. I'm not sure what it's called with other types of testing, but you definitely want to have written rules of engagement. What are you testing? What are the boundaries around what you're testing? And so forth and so on. And this is going to be required for planning and assessment, requirements analysis, test execution, and analysis results and documentation. The next operational security service that you can buy or acquire or develop in-house is training. Training is one of the most critical components in maintaining the security posture of operational systems. Securing an organization's IT systems cannot be achieved without skilled, knowledgeable, and trained personnel at all levels. Security training and education has to be considered an ongoing effort that's an integral part of the way you conduct your business. With constantly evolving technology, education has to keep pace with the changes and the advances. Managers have to understand the current status of their security programs and controls to make informed judgments and investments to appropriately mitigate risk to an acceptable level. And all IT system users have to be aware of their responsibilities for protecting information and IT resources. Talking about training, let's look at the IT security learning continuum. It represents instructional guidance for IT security awareness training and education programs. The model is created from requirements of several federal regulations, including OMB Circular A130. It illustrates a three-dimensional array that integrates the following 3 types of training: awareness, training, and education. And there's 6 functional security roles: manage, acquire, design and develop, implement and operate, review and evaluate, and use. 3 levels of training are beginning, intermediate, and advanced. This is your IT security learning continuum. Okay, there are 4 steps that you need to be aware of if you're developing this in-house. In designing and implementing an IT security training and awareness program, designing an awareness and training program, developing awareness and training material, program implementation, and then your post-implementation activities. Again, you can develop that in-house or you can outsource that. So training services look like this. IT security training service providers may offer you a wide range of services to support the total security awareness and training program. They can design, develop, implement, and maintain a program for the organization, but they can also assist with just specific elements of the organization training and awareness program. You can hire somebody to just come in and do the awareness training, but you handle the more technical training in-house, okay? The service provider can provide the following services that can be program level support, course level support, or training support services. So those are your 4 OPSEC operational security services. Again, contingency planning, incident handling, testing, and training. And finally, technical security services that you may want to consider. Firewalls, intrusion detection, and public key infrastructure. 3 of them: firewalls, intrusion detection, and public key infrastructure. Firewalls. Firewall is a device that has a network protection application installed to safeguard the network from intentional or unintentional intrusion. A firewall is going to sit at the junction between 2 networks, usually a private network and a public network, such as the internet. And by segmenting your network into different physical subnets, the firewalls limit damage that could spread from one subnet to another, acting in the same manner as fire doors or firewalls in automobiles. So some firewall services: designing a firewall solution that incorporates single or multiple firewalls, installing and integrating the firewall into new and existing networks, monitoring firewall services to ensure availability and integration with other technical controls such as your incident response or intrusion detection systems, and managing the organization's firewalls, including periodically upgrading them. Your company can select specific service providers who work with a trusted family of products that belongs to them, and Cisco comes to mind. So you get a Cisco next gen firewall that you install on a Cisco network, and Cisco is your service provider. Or you can work with general service providers, and these are resellers who specialize in offering a wide variety of security services using products and components from outside vendors. Okay, next up, intrusion detection. Intrusion is any set of actions that attempts to compromise the confidentiality, integrity, or availability of a resource. Intrusion detection is a passive security activity that sits on the network or on selected host. Devices that are part of the IDS are used to detect intrusion and provide information to a central management console. This information is reviewed by security staff to determine if a valid security breach has taken place. The functions of an intrusion detection system are: monitor user and system activity, audit system configuration and vulnerabilities, assess integrity of critical system and data files, recognize activity patterns reflecting known attacks, perform statistical analysis for abnormal activity patterns, provide operating system audit trail management with recognition of user activity reflecting policy violations, and provide customized reports. A little bit about intrusion detection services. Effective intrusion detection requires a robust knowledge base of attack signatures against which the IDS can tally its findings. Threats and vulnerabilities are not static in nature, and they're continuously changing and evolving. So your attack signatures database should be updated frequently, and it has to be for the IDS to be effective in detecting the most recent threats. Service providers may have greater leverage to accomplish this at less cost because several customers can share the the overhead of maintaining the database for a single IDS product. And I know that Cisco does that, and I cannot think of the name of the product, but yeah. IDSs require a high level of expertise to operate and manage. You got to know what you're doing. So you want to hire somebody who's competent, of course. If the nature of the intrusion is such that the IDS or the service provider is incapable of resolving the matter, or the contract does not require the service provider to resolve the problem, then the service provider can contact the organization, which in turn escalates the case for resolution. But all of that needs to be spelled out in your service contract. What is your escalation procedure? What are your notification and escalation procedures? And then public key infrastructure. Modern security architectures protect and distribute information that is needed in a widely distributed environment where the users, resources, and stakeholders may all be in different places at different times. PKI, public key infrastructure, is an approach that addresses these security needs and makes use of the scalable and distributed characteristics of PKI, consisting of products, services, facilities, policies, procedures, agreements, and people. PKI allows your organization to conduct business electronically with confidence that the person or process identified as sending the transaction is actually the originator. That's called non-repudiation. That the person or the process receiving the transaction is the intended recipient. That's identification and authentication. And that data integrity has not been compromised. That is integrity. PKI can also provide two additional services: key recovery, K-E-Y recovery, and privilege authorization. Key recovery is where you have to be able to recover data that your employee has encrypted. And this can only be done by recovering the encryption key when the key is unavailable. And then privilege authorization certificates can be used to vouch for a user's identity and also specify the privileges that the user has been granted in a particular technical environment. So some functional elements of a public key infrastructure are your certificate authorities, registration authorities, repositories, and archives. If you're acquiring PKI services and you don't know what those four things are, get on that. Okay, because there are some NIST publications that do address PKI and can bring you up to speed. This is 832, which is the intro to PKI and federal PKI. 825 talks about federal use of public key technology for your digital signatures. And GAO report 01-277, advances and remaining challenges to adoption of public key infrastructure technology. Okay. PKI services, what falls under that? Designing, developing, deploying, and maintaining a PKI is a complex technical challenge that is compounded by a number of factors: interoperability, scalability, high cost, complex policy development, and training challenges for a technology that can be complex and difficult to understand. So your PKI services can be packaged in a number of ways. The entire PKI process can be performed by a service provider. A security provider can manage the PKI in-house, and PKI elements may be performed by a provider, and that's your hybrid situation, where some of it you do, some of it they do. Examples of PKI elements that could be provided as a service include certificate validation, certificate issuance, supplemental PKI services, technology updates, ad hoc data collection, analysis and dissemination, and hardware tokens. So your technical security services, again, are firewalls, intrusion detection, and public key infrastructure. And so this is what we covered. We did an overview. Who is this publication for? We talked about your service arrangements and the categories of IT security services: management, operational, and technical. And then we went under each one of those categories and talked about some of the possible services that you could acquire. Program development, policy, contingency planning, firewalls, all of the above. So I appreciate you hanging out with me today. I really do. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments section. And if you'd like to reach me, my contact information, of course, is on the last slide. Thanks, guys, and have a great day.